Hi, I'm Lori Grunin, Senior Editor for CNET, and this is the Canon PowerShot G1X. What you think about the G1X depends upon whether you view it as a cheap alternative to the Fujifilm X100 or as an expensive competitor to a lot of other fixed and interchangeable lens models. Because the price of the camera sets it apart from the crowd as much as its largest sensor. And despite delivering on image quality and having a pretty nice shooting design, the lens, and to a lesser extent the shooting performance, hold it back from being worth the price. It's bigger, heavier, and boxier than the G12, and it uses a pop-up rather than a front-mounted flash. But the G1X nevertheless looks and feels quite similar to its older sibling. Overall, I like the design, though the function button behavior can get a little frustrating. Unlike other cameras, which automatically hide the menu when you press the shutter button, Canon's remains until you press the function button again. As a result, I frequently found myself scrolling around the options when I thought I was changing the shutter speed. I like the flip and twist LCD, it's bright and big, and though the optical viewfinder is quite small, it is still useful to have. The buttons and dials feel responsive and well laid out. Many of the new features, like the multi-area white balance and intelligent image stabilization, launched with the S100, and they only work in auto mode. The intelligent image stabilization auto-detects what type of stabilization is necessary in both still and video modes, and the updated white balance does better scene analysis. The camera also introduces face recognition and can store up to 12 faces with some limited associated metadata. You'll also find a bunch of multi-shot modes, including a 5-shot HDR mode, though I find Canon's implementations just okay. Like the G12, it has a built-in neutral density filter, which I like. While the camera gets high marks for photo quality, it's not significantly better than cheaper ILCs like the Olympus EPL3 or the Sony NEX5N. One advantage that Canon does retain over its rivals is its excellent JPEG processing and noise reduction, which allows it to produce extremely clean photos as high as ISO 400, and seriously usable ones up through ISO 3200. Color and exposure look great as well. The lens has good center sharpness, but it's not that great on the edges. Movies look fine for casual shooting. They've got decent sharpness and exposure with minimal rolling shutter, but there's quite a bit of aliasing and there's a relatively narrow tonal range. Unfortunately, the G1X gets relatively low marks for performance, in part because of its sluggish shot-to-shot speed. It's even slower than the G12, and in part because of some really disappointing lens characteristics. The camera doesn't feel as sluggish to shoot with as the data would imply, but also I probably didn't notice because I spent a disproportionate amount of time dealing with this small aperture lens and its bizarre focusing distance constraints. I really would expect a wider than f2 maximum aperture on an $800 camera. But more important, I expect it to be a lot faster than f5.8 at its longest telephoto. Not only does that compare poorly with similar focal ranges on the less expensive Olympus XE1 and Fujifilm X10, but it's worse in practice. It's only f2.8 at 28 millimeters. By about 31.5 millimeters, it's already jumped to f3.2, and it narrows about halfway down the focal range, and that's it. And that's only one problem. The other is the lens's minimum focusing distance. It can only focus as close as 7.9 inches, and that's in macro mode. In standard focus, it's a more normal 1.3 feet. Also annoying, the camera can only auto-switch between macro and standard focus modes in complete auto. That means unlearning habits about lens settings and spending too much time jumping in and out of macro modes. A lot of people think that Canon's missing out by lagging in its interchangeable lens camera development, and it is. The G1X targets a growing part of the market, which is composed of people who don't really care about changing lenses and just want better photo quality. But ironically, its disappointing lens makes a better case for getting an ILC in this price segment than for buying this fixed lens option. I'm Lori Grunin, and this is the Canon PowerShot G1X.